Haidong! In this video, we're going to talk about 3 more concepts to think about when you go through your cutting focus number 2. So just like with our past videos on, again, concepts to think about as you go through a focus, right? Because these are allegedly ideas focusing on, again, a certain concept. So again, we're talking about cutting focus, so these should all be working on better cuts. So let's talk about, again, specifically number 2, which is going to be also a portion of number 3 as well, right? I'm actually going to be focusing mostly on the second half of number 2, right? So the first half of number 2 is, there's so many parts. The first half of number 2 is actually just 9 count, right? So if you've done Guangsha Pegi and you kind of focus on the ideas of Guangsha Pegi, you still have the ideas in mind as you go through 9 count. Let's take a look at, again, the second half of it, because that's kind of like the weird portion. That's one you actually have to learn how to do. It's actually going to be working on a few concepts that are going to be very, very near and dear to probably every swordsman's heart. So the idea is, so we just did our 9 count, right? So we just did the 2 uppercuts, and now we're going into, so from here, and you're going to be cutting. I call this the clockwork. There is an actual Korean term for it, and you have a nice, vertical cut, right? And it's going to be the other side as well, but again, just because I don't want to get in trouble with the Federation, I'm going to keep it vague, at least in terms of what's actually going on with that. But let's talk about a few of the ideas, especially with this one. This is going to be very true for, again, you learn this very early on in your Gumdo career, right? It's weird to consider a career. But yeah, so for example, this, right? So here, ban, 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 right? You can imagine a few things that can go kind of wrong, especially again if you've seen quite a lot of people practicing this, right? It's very easy to kind of have this kind of thing, right? So the first thing I want you to think about is your preparation on your left hand, right? So for example, if your left hand's here, clearly not great, right? So have it, right? So feel your chest push out and have it over your head, cut down. Back, feel this open up, feel this push back, cut through. Back, feel it again now in your lower core, cut through. Back, feel it in your deep shoulder. Right? So if you want to think from the side, right? So if it's, bad example, right? Where the hand is already kind of like hovering in this area, you want to be covering like near your nose level. So back, cut, back, cut, back, cut, back, cut, other side, bam, right? So you want to have, again, that flat plate, right? Where your left hand's pushing behind. Make sense? And this is a concept, again, that, again, in cutting focus, it should be applicable to cutting. And this is going to be true for, again, every time you cut, almost every time, because there will be sometimes you do shortcuts. But, so whenever you're doing a form, right? So for example, doing just number 1, right? This, no, right? It's just a bunch of no, right? Versus, again, having that left hand all the way like in line with the nose, maybe even further back. Right? So you're going to get a lot more power, right? But why, right? So why do I care so much about the left hand? Because again, my students and probably people who watch this channel know I like to talk about the left hand quite a lot. So why do I care, right? Because a lot of times when we do one-handed, it's going to be right-handed, with the exception of parts in 7 and above, right? So it might be like, all right, so why do you care so much about that left hand? Well, it's almost like a shortcut for you to think about, right? If you engage the left hand a little bit more, it's actually going to be using more of your actual body. Versus the right hand, because a lot of us are right hand dominant, I'm mostly dominant my right hand. I'm a little bit ambidextrous in some circumstances. But in this case, right, when I'm thinking about just right hand, I'm thinking like, scalpel use, so I'm very dexterous with it, but not very powerful, right? I'm using mostly, again, the smaller muscles, versus when I use my left hand, I'm using, again, more power, right? I'm engaging my whole body more. So when you go through your cutting focus, right, think about that left hand pushes back. You should feel your whole body react. Push, feel this open up. Push, lower, push, up. Make sense? Another aspect is going to be the extension, right? So you want to have good preparation. You also don't want to be like, right, or, right? So big extension, right? So again, this has a lot more because you have to do a lot more for yourself for this one because you're not moving into a cut, you're stationary, right? So you're here, you have to push it back. So you're doing all the work, big cut, push it back, big cut. So make sure you follow through. You don't want to be like, eh. You also don't want to be a late extension either. So here, big cut, push back, big cut, push back, big cut, especially uppercuts. It's very easy to kind of do like a meh, right? So bun, have that nice big extension over here. Bun, other side, extend, cut through, right? Here, extend out, cut through, extend out, especially on your right hand side. Bun, and eventually again, vertical cut, almost scrape up, bun. Make sense? So again, extension is again going to be something really, really important. Like if you look at form 2, right? So for here, meh, meh, right? Versus whole body, falling through with your cut. You're going to notice it's going to be a lot bigger, right? So obviously a bigger motion means, so first of all, it draws the person away more, right? It also means you're engaging in the bigger muscle groups because you have to push it all extended and being fall through with that cut. So all in all, if you again focus on that big extension when you do your second cutting focus, it's also going to help you in better cases, right? So when you actually are moving, so for again in number 2, you're moving into a cut this way, right? So it's a lot easier for you to again engage the whole body because your body is moving with it. Versus if we're here, even if I'm here, right? I have to have all that power. So I'm the one who has to push it back, big motion, push it back, big motion, push it back, big motion. I have to generate all that power as opposed to the motion doing it for me. So focus on the extension. The last one's not going to be really a surprise, right? Because I already talked about big preparation, big extension. So now think about using your whole body as you cut. Now you can tell, you could do both of those things just using your arms. Big extension, big prep, big motion. You can still do all of it, but notice it's very, very weak, it's lackluster, and you actually are going to get tired more quickly, right? So that might sound counterintuitive, right? It's like, all right, I'm not putting as much effort in, therefore I shouldn't be, tired near the end, right? But because you're using the same smaller muscle groups over and over and over and over, you're going to get tired. Versus, if we're here, again, these bigger muscle groups, again, using the chest, using the glutes, using the sides of your muscles, right? From here, I'm again engaging my core, right? Again, my core, my glutes, and even like the muscles along my waist, right? Using that to power up your cut. I'm going to be tired less quickly, actually, and actually using again the big motion is going to actually pump me with adrenaline, right? And it's also just going to be more powerful, right? It's also going to damage you in the end a little bit less. So once again, now if we're kind of thinking about again another form, let's go on number 3 because I did 1 and 2 as well. So number 3, right? So this kind of motion, this can be done all arms. It'll be very weak, right? Versus if I engage the whole body, right? 1, bam, bam. You can feel the power pushing into a cut, right? So again, why is this in the cutting focus? Well, if you're in a stationary position, I have to generate all that power myself. My body's not going to naturally do it. So from here, yes, I could do big extension from a good preparation very weakly, right? Versus again, the whole body. Make sense? I know we mostly focus on the second half of the second cutting focus, which I know has a name, which I'm sure someone will be more than happy to maybe leave in the comments per se. But again, so what I call the clockwork, just because you're kind of working along kind of like the sides of a clock, right? So that particular combination is really good about testing kind of worst case scenarios, right? So what happens when I can't move into a nice big preparation cut? What happens when I have to be like stationary and someone's coming at me? I can still generate good, powerful motions, even maybe advance from a weird position with a vertical cut and still have that power, right? So just like with the form, you kind of take the worst case scenario, just being here, right? It's kind of like, again, not being able to move that much and still be able to generate all of that power, right? So again, so think about using the left hand preparation. Think about using, again, extension. It will be fully extended by the time you hit your partner or your target, right? And drag through until it's really done. And also working on your whole body for your cut. So keep those three in mind as you go through your cutting focus. Again, you teach this actually pretty early on in the Gumdo curriculum, so that will give you a lot of time for you to practice and hone. So with that, so keep training, stay safe, and stay humble. Haidong.